Welcome to everyone that's joined us. This is part of an ongoing series related to sustainability topics to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. This topic that you're going to hear about today is on sustainable seafood, and you're going to be hearing from Armando Ubeda and Dr. Angela Collins. Armando is based at the Sarasota County Extension Office, and Angela is based at the Manatee County Extension Office, and we're happy to share this information with you today. My name is Alyssa Vincent, and I'm the residential horticulture agent here up in Manatee County, and we're excited to be working together to bring you all of this wonderful information. As you'll notice, as we go throughout the program, please, if you have any questions, go ahead and enter them into the Q&A, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Armando to get started.
Thank you, Alyssa. That's a great presentation, introduction. And thank you, folks, for joining us. As Alyssa said, today our topic is sustainable seafood. And I'm going to be your main speaker, but we have Dr. Angela Collins as well here. And at the end, we're going to be able to answer questions specifically to our programs or, in general to this subject. So today, for those who might know, you already heard about extension, but we'd like to show this slide so to advertise all the programs that we do and things that we have to offer. But the extension office, it is, well, at least ours, like any other county, we have an office that is an extension of the university. It's to serve our community. So we have different programs from agriculture to youth development, like 4-H, for example. I'm in the natural resources department, so that's where the Spoonbill is. But we have a lot of programs to offer and a lot of things that we can share with you, and we're a source of information. And if you have questions, look for us and we'll help you with things that fall into these departments. So you might identify for some of our logos, we're Angela and I, we're Sea Grant, but there's many more, like Master Gardeners, so fabulous volunteers. Alyssa worked with them, the Florida Math and Atlas program, Green Businesses, Family Consumer Science, 4-H, etc. So with that, today we're going to be talking about sustainable seafood. So let me move my controls out of the way. Oh my God. That means I cannot see the chat. So if somebody has something they need immediate answer, please let me know because I'm not looking at the chat. So today, basically, we're going to talk about what is seafood, why is seafood so important, some issues related to seafood, what is sustainable seafood, and some tools for you that you can use to determine if your seafood is sustainable or not. So what is seafood? Let's start with that. Seafood, as you can see by the definition there, is all fish and shellfish harvested from captive fisheries and also agriculture production, and also includes freshwater environments. So when you hear the term seafood, you might think only marine coastal environments. But the term seafood also brings in the freshwater environment products like, from aquaculture. Those are some examples of things that you might see, obviously, sashimi, tuna, uni, which is the gonad of urchins, eating sushi, oysters, we love oysters, blue crabs, octopus, you name it. Those are our products considered seafood. So seafood is extremely important to our economy, but also to our health and to humans in general, because it's the highly traded food internationally. So it's a product that imports is, enormous, and it provides livelihood for many different people around the globe, from people that depend on the industry, like fishers, to recreational fishers, to all the people that traders, markets, transportation, etc. So it's a huge business, and it contributes at least 50% of the consumption of meat protein in many different countries to 2.9 billion people. And this is from a study in 2010. So I'm sure these figures have increased. Why so important seafood? Well, not only, as I said before, it's a source of protein meat from many different people around the globe, but also has a lot of benefits that you probably already hear about it. I'm not going to try to pronounce some of these acid names, but I will talk to them about it. So you have polyunsaturated long-chain fatty acids. Those are fatty acids that actually are healthy for you. They have acids that actually help with brain development, heart, prevent heart disease, cancer, many other different things that they're important to us. A lot of elements that we need for our bodies, like potassium, sodium, etc. A lot of vitamins are found in different seafoods. And again, it depends on the type of seafood, but they all have healthy benefits. The fish protein is highly digestible, so because it have low connectivity tissue. And if it is that fat, it's healthy fat. So that's very important. You probably hear about omega-3. Omega-3 is this right here, this two right here. That's what make omega-3, which you can buy as a vitamin supplement, which is really great for the brain, heart, many other different things. So it is good. It's very healthy. However, because these animals, we actually take them from the wild in most cases, they can be exposed to certain things that can be unhealthy for us. So like water pollutants that can risk the consumption of seafood. It can be harmful. Toxins, parasites, and heavy metals, especially when you hear the word heavy metals, you think about mercury probably. And that's something that everybody's pretty aware of. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't know much about the impact of mercury and seafood. So I'm going to expand into that. So when you think about mercury, not about this mercury right here, but about this mercury to the left, at least, well, sorry, to my right. Although I like Freddie Mercury. Mercury, it comes in two forms. It's inorganic and organic matter. And it can have many different shapes. If you look at the base there and the cave painting, I think it's a bison or something like that. Those are made of some, it's called Sibaro, I forgot. But it's some kind of natural mercury that you find in volcanic ashes. Normally it was heavily used by prehistoric civilization to create artifacts, to paint their faces, to paint in caves. So that's a form of mercury. We also have inorganic mercury that we use for, like, let's say batteries, thermometers, and things like that. The one we should be concerned about is the organic mercury. The metal mercury is one example of one of those. It's the one who can get into the natural system, normally gets trapped in the sediments and then passed on through the food chain all the way to bigger fish. That's the one we consume. So it can accumulate in the tissue and the muscles of some of these animals and pass on into the higher trophic level, in this case us, we end the product. I'm putting this example here. You might have heard of Minamata disease, which is associated to Minamata Bay in Japan. That's one of the well-known case studies of release of mercury from industry. They were dumping mercury as a waste product to this bay, which heavily fish, and where a lot of these people in that community fish for those, ate those fish from that bay. This was known in the 1950s, so it's been quite a long time. But people start getting speech impairment, visual constrictions, sensory disturbance, including death, and you can see there to all the things. So it can be a serious issue, but this is a highly concentrated levels of mercury into a particular system. And it was because of intentional release of mercury as a waste product of this industry. So there's natural occurrence of mercury, which is at low levels, but there is high concentration of mercury at some spots just due to industries like this one. After they find this, it became really well known. So it's called Minamata disease. Actually, some people refer it like that, and they stopped the leakage of the mercury into the bay. So it is such a big issue that NOAA, the National Atmospherics, National Ethics, have Center for Coastal and Ocean Science, sorry, have as a whole department just to look at mercury hotspots. So basically areas with mercury might be accumulating in levels that it might be harmful to the marine life and to us eventually. So among the characteristics that fish tend to be associated with high levels of mercury, this is not black and white. So even though these are like the three most general, that doesn't mean that always the case. But fish that are at the top of the food web tend to accumulate more mercury just because the little fish, the smaller fish, the tiny fish, it then by the little bigger fish accumulates, and then the other one and the other one, so on. So mercury keeps passing on into the bigger fish. So fish are higher trophic level normally are the ones who accumulate more mercury if they're exposed to levels of mercury. Those species normally are pelagic. That means they're in the open ocean, traveling long distances, eating from many different stocks of fish that might have been exposed to these mercury hotspots. And also fish that grow large but take a long time to grow, again, they are more susceptible to be accumulating mercury to a long period of time. And you can find out more about this if you follow the link that I posted here below to learn more about mercury. The good news is that, again, these are very localized places that they have identified with hotspots. And all studies that have been done so far, I've been looking at the benefits outweigh the risk of eating seafood. There's, pregnant women and people with maybe low immune system compromise, they might be a little bit more careful. But in general, there's a lot of information about where your seafoods come from. That's when I talk to you in the upcoming slides. for you to be sure that these are like healthy and sustainable seafood. But anyway, let's move on. So is your seafood sustainable? And what do we mean by being sustainable? So seafood that is sustainable, it means that we are either farm or caught wild. You can maintain or increase production without jeopardizing the structure and function of the ecosystem. I mean, it's not impacting the species that we're targeting, and it's not impacting the environment where it lives, and it's not impacting other species that might be associated with the species that you are targeting. So for example, if you're gonna harvest, if you're gonna have fisheries for, let's say, red drum, you're gonna make sure that you can maintain the production of structure of the population of red drums. They don't decline, they either stay or go higher, and then you don't affect all the fishes associated, all the organisms associated with, red drums, which in part are part of the big ecosystem. So again, a fishery removes tons of fish from one trophic level, can jeopardize the health of the other ones below. A fishery that have a lot of bycatch is byproducts of fisheries. Like, for example, if you're trolling with big nets over the floor of the ocean and you're targeting for shrimp, but you're capturing tons of rays and sharks and other fish that you're not gonna even use it, you're discarding them, that's not a healthy, sustainable fisheries, right? And then fisheries that might impact the environment or the habitat where this species live. For example, in this case, it's a picture of somebody fishing in a coral reef with dynamite. So that obviously will kill a lot of fish at once, that some they will never use, some of them they will use, but then it also creates destruction of the habitat where these fish depend on. So basically, it's a one-time deal, right? So you don't want that. Same from the same study, they looked at why these fisheries in general, they can be problematic in terms of management or secure a sustainable future for this industry. It's because they're tightly tied to ecosystem health. So if you have unhealthy ecosystems, then you can collapse your fisheries, you can collapse the functionality of that ecosystem, and that means affecting the population of the species living in there. And also it's depend on common pool resources. So a lot of our fisheries happen inshore. Of course, we have more regulations and more ways to control it. But a lot of these fisheries happen in international waters, shared water. So there is hardly any or very hard to regulate and to make sure things are being done in the way they're supposed to be. So those are two big issues when it relates to fisheries and to make it maybe not sustainable in some instances. From the same study, they've been looking at, and I know this map is a little hard to read, but I'm going to describe it to you. What is important is the text to what is my left. So fishing can reduce target species. Target species, the fish that you're going for, but also can alter marine food webs. I already told you this. If you, let's say you remove, the big predators, you might have a big impact, and the herbivores below, and the herbivores can create damage into the things below. So it creates a whole disbalance, keep things in shape. Poor governance, so lack of regulation, overfishing, that can create an unsustainable system. Bad aquaculture, there's many different examples of bad aquaculture where they destroy habitat, and basically they cannot use it for more than a couple of years, and then they have to move to a new area. But I'm going to talk to you also about the good aquaculture in a second. Consumption of seafood products is not shared equally among countries, so that's what the map see there. You see that in the map on the top, the higher colors, or the more bright colors, are the higher consumption of seafood. And for most part, these countries are not the ones that produce most of the seafood. It's the other way around. The countries that have, that's the map below, they have less consumption of seafood, sometimes are the ones who produce more seafood, and they don't even get that seafood themselves. So it's not an even consumption for distribution of benefits, put it this way, the seafood provides. And also corruption. A lot of these exports of seafood from these developing countries into the developed countries, then the revenue from that export is not shared equally or distributed for the for the benefit of the people of these little countries or those developing countries, because there's a lot of corruption at the government level. So there's many issues with seafood that they make it not sustainable. In the meantime, all this happening and continue happening, the demand for seafood continue growing. So we still want more seafood. That's something that we population are growing. So the demand obviously is going to increase. So one thing that's been looked at is that in order to keep this demand and to make it healthy, we need to have better aquaculture so we can actually start producing most of the seafood instead of just catching wild. And we also need to keep making sure that the fisheries are sustainable so we can maintain those populations or have them increase so we can continue to do this in a sustainable way. So in the United States, it is, luckily for us that we live here, United States is recognizable as a global leader when it comes to sustainable seafood, both for wild and farm fisheries. So how, why? Well, our marine wild capture fisheries are scientifically monitored. What does that mean, scientifically monitored? So scientists, there's whole people, working in many different in many areas of their state, and at regional level, national level, looking at the fishery data to make sure that the populations are, to find out if the populations are declining or increasing or staying stable, and that information comes from the fisheries. It's come from independent fishery samples. So scientists going out and fish themselves. They look for, let's say, you want to look how snooks are doing. They get data from the people that actually catching big snooks, but they also do sampling of the little snooks, the juveniles, just to make sure that they can make projections over time and estimate how the population is doing. Not just looking at one size, but looking at the whole population, from the little ones to the big ones. So they are scientifically monitoring each species that is fishing commercially, so we can make better decisions in terms of, should we close the fishery, should we keep it open, can we increase the fishery, and that kind of things. They also regional manage. I already told you there's we have a Gulf of Mexico group just looking at the Gulf of Mexico. Then you have the state looking at the state. Then you have different municipalities, I guess, counties looking. For example, there's some instance that some fisheries are open in the upper part of the state, but they're closed in the south because they're looking at it independently. There's the same species but different populations. So that's may make our country recognized as a leader in sustainable seafood, because we look at a very large level and very localized level as well. We also have very good reinforcements in terms of laws, enforcing the 10 national standards of sustainability through the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conversion Management Act, long sentence. But that means that we actually, put very strict regulations to make sure that our fishery is sustainable. And you can learn more about this. NOAA has this page called Fishwatch, and I'm going to show you a little bit more about it. But it has all the seafood facts. So for it, at the species level to regional level. So it's a very good resource for you to learn more about how the state is actually leading sustainable seafood. So aquaculture production, there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to aquaculture because of those bad examples that I was telling you about earlier. But aquaculture can be actually really good if it's done well. And unfortunately, in the US, we're a little bit behind when it comes to aquaculture production compared to other countries. And we need to make sure that we step up, because the demand, as I said, is increasing for seafood. And some of our wild stocks we cannot take more than we have been taking. So we do need better aquaculture. And good thing is that aquaculture, just like commercial fisheries, operates under very robust environmental protection. So it's heavily monitored to make sure that there's no damage to the ecosystem or the species or wild populations of fish. Again, you can learn more about that at the Fishwatch and the NOAA page. So what do you need to do? Should you stop eating seafood? No, obviously not. You don't want to be stop eating seafood. I'd show you that seafood can be extremely healthy for you, and it can be sustainable. So, but what do you need to do? You need to know where your seafood comes from. If you go to the supermarket, for example, all seafood should be tells you where it's coming from, where it was caught, and how, at least for most part. And that gives you indication where it's coming from. So if it's coming from the United States, you already learned in the previous slide that we have very strict rules. So for that instance, you can say, yeah, this is sustainable seafood because it is caught here. If it's not caught in the United States, I'm going to give you some examples of things that you could do. But the best thing is to eat local and support your local fisheries, because it's people that work here, people that contribute to your economy. And then we know that they've been regulated very heavily so that you know that seafood is sustainable. You need to learn about the seafood that you're eating. So if you know you like tuna, find out where the tuna is coming from, find out how it's fished. All those things can help you make better decisions about sustainability. Also, you can support environmental stewardship. There's what I call eco labels. Some organizations have these labels to show the public something that they can identify and see this is either, it's dolphin friendly. So when you're catching this fish, you're not killing dolphins. It's sustainable certified. Some of these eco labels, however, the industries have to pay to get them, but it's outside reviewers who do this. So it's not, you're not paying somebody to give you stickers, as you say. You actually get into the process that you're going to send external evaluators and evaluate your industry. This is not, I think this is a good tool, especially with seafood that is coming from other places, because you don't know. But anyway, those tools exist, and you have to help people make decisions. But again, if it is caught in the United States, for all these regulational things that I told you, you are supporting a sustainable fisheries. So the Fishwatch that I've been talking about in the NOAA page is a very good resource. It's a beautiful, it's a very easy friendly, I should say, navigate, very user-friendly website that you can use. This is how it looks like. If you go to Fishwatch, I think this is the main point of entry that you get. You can type the fish that you're looking for, or that you want to buy or eat at a restaurant, and then it can tell you all the information about the population status. And this is just a quick sample. I did black grouper. Angela, by the way, Dr. Angela Collins, she's an expert in groupers. So if you have a specific question about groupers, I'm going to put it in the spot. You can ask her later. But anyway, here, this is an example. If you type black grouper, it will give you the scientific name of the species, obviously. It will give you the population status, as you can see here. It will tell you, and this is extremely important, how the fishery is impacting the habitat where the species live. Remember, we will want to impact the environment where the species live, because then you jeopardize the health of that population and the other ones related to this, to that site. So in this case, it has very minimal impact on the habitat, so that will be a great choice. Fishing rate is at recommended level. So again, this information about the fishing rates, it comes from those scientists looking into all this data to try to make, to look at the trends over time, and through the precautionary approach, make decisions so not to put that stock in jeopardy. So that's what right now the black grouper is at recommended levels. And bycatch is what I was telling you about, the example of the picture. They were throwing all these dead animals. So we always want to minimize bycatch, because you don't want to be throwing stuff that you're not going to use and that can have an impact on the environment as well. So it is a good fishery because it has very minimum bycatch. And also the sites, which is great, it gives you where can you find the taste of the fish. It's healthy benefits. You actually break it down for levels, how many fats, how much protein, and all the different things that they have. And even by ounce, I just did a program last night that I cooked mahi-mahi, and I think it's like 8 ounces of mahi-mahi, or 6 ounces, like 31 grams of protein, sorry. So it gives you very detailed information about the health benefits of the seafood that you intended to eat. Texture, nutritional facts, and some recipes, which is great. And that's just one example, but they have many different species here that you probably seen in the market or restaurants. So it is awesome. I think it's a great tool. There's all the products that you can use that they are out there. So it's worth mentioning because a lot of people know about this. This is the Seafood Watch from Monterrey Bay Aquarium. This is an app that you can download to your phone. By the way, you can access the Fishwatch to your phone too if you have a smartphone. This is another one that has been put out there, and they have their own way to look at sustainability and seafood, but it's highly accepted for some folks. So again, some people have used this in the past, and you've probably seen it. What I like about the Seafood Watch is that it gives you information about fisheries outside the United States. So if I'm at the market and I don't know I know it's not US, at least Fishwatch only concentrates on national source of species, information from species to national level. This one at least tells you a little bit. So if I see something doesn't look good to me, that says there, I'm like, okay, no. Okay, so that it is. And this is just an example of things that it tells you, by location, where you can go buy it, and type of fish, if it's wild, if it's farm. So it's very similar to Fishwatch. it tells you to avoid it or not, depending on things I already mentioned. All right. And that's another thing, that if you go to a restaurant, you're entitled to ask, where is this fish coming from? How is it caught? And you should ask those questions, because if they don't have the answers, there's something they will think about. The customers are asking. And I can see that a lot of restaurants that I've been going through a longer time and they kind of get to know me, they put more effort into finding out. It's because I do want to know. So you should know what you're eating, and that to make sure that you care, and to make sure that what they saw in you is, coming from sustainable fisheries. All right. So another good resource to find sustainable seafood is by looking to this website right here. This is National Fisherman website. So nationalfisherman.com. You can find local seafood, and you can look at seafood products that are available, availability of the seafood products, where all those markets are, and where you can go. So it's another great resource if you cannot go out, especially now that we're limited into our mobility due to the COVID-19. There's ways that you can buy seafood locally, and even there's a lot of seafood that can be cheap to you. A lot of people don't know this, but you can actually order food to come to your house. So there's no excuse to stop eating seafood, which again, it has so many health benefits that we should increase or continue eating seafood. Another good resources to find where to find sustainable seafood is the FDAC website, which you have right here on the top of this page. And the good thing about this is the Florida ranks among the top 12 United States where fresh food, seafood production. And again, we have highly regulated seafood industry, so you can feel comfortable that this is sustainable fishery. So we do have a great production of seafood. We catch more than 80% of the national supply of grouper, pompano, mullet, stone crab, pink shrimp, spiny lobster, spiny mackerel. So big production of those industries right there, which is great. So this is just an example of how the website looks like. You go into the FDAC site, and you can actually look for browns by city or by county or by zip code even, and it will gives you a detailed map. And I just did this. It's a screenshot of I was looking, I think I did Sarasota, and then I opened it up a little more, and then I expanded the map and gives me a bunch of sites that are listed here. So this is another great resource for you to find out what local markets are nearby you, and you can call them. Like I cooked mangrove snapper a couple months ago, and I did call my market and I asked them, hey, do you have it? How fresh it is. Sometimes you cannot ask those questions at the supermarket because they're pretty busy, but if you call in advance, ask them what do they have. They have time to answer those questions, which make me feel much better about what I was eating. I knew they told me when they got the fish, where was it from, so it makes me feel good. So that's a great resources, like I said. And they also show you recipes like the Fishwatch website, and they also give you details about when, let's say you want red snapper. It will tell you if the season is closed, which months and which one is not, which is another great information to know, if you're eating sustainable product by knowing when actually it should be sold. Or maybe they sold to you because it's been frozen, but anyway, so you get more information about the species. So it's a great resource for you to explore. We also have Florida Sea Grant. We have a huge, an awesome program, at least I think it's awesome. It's called Seafood at Your Fingertips. So what we've been doing, a bunch of agents, Angela participates in that as well as I myself. We are cooking online, basically, during a Facebook Live event. I did mahi wrapping banana leaves yesterday. So basically, we're telling you how to cook your seafood. We provide information about the ecology and the biology of the animals. We're providing recipes and regulation information and some other cool facts about the species that we are interested in. But we basically been doing this now for, as I said, like 5 months or so. We're in our second season, which started yesterday. This happens every Wednesday at 6 p.m. You can go to the Florida Sea Grant page on web and our Facebook page every Wednesday, just a little bit before 6 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Central time, and you will see the live presentation. So it's pretty funny and it's very informative and very pleased. Anyway, I'm very pleased with what we put out there. So that's another resource that you have, not to learn about seafood that you might consume, but also have to cook it, because it's also another problem that we have. A lot of people depend on restaurants to eat their seafood. The seafood consumption, even though we produce a lot of seafood in this state, most of the seafood is consumed in restaurants and not at home. And that happens on a national level too. Most of the seafood, and nothing wrong with going to a restaurant and supporting your local economy. But let's say you can't, so you should still be eating seafood. So this is another way to continue, adding healthy food to your system. Before we go into questions, I'm gonna send a quick poll here. Let me see if I can grab my controls back yet. And it's a very short poll, so if you can please attend this poll, that would be great. It just help us. It's totally anonymous, but it help us design better our program. And you can be pretty honest. You won't hurt my feelings. I'll give it 30 more seconds. All right, I think that's it. I don't see the bars moving. All right. So you see the poll there? Well, that's good. All right. Let me go to my next slide. Well, thank you. This is a not very long presentation, but I do want to leave enough time for questions. And this is our contact information for myself and Dr. Angela Collins. She's in Manatee County. I'm in Sarasota County. But I'm going to stop sharing because I do want to hear from you. So hopefully there's some questions that we can address.
Thanks, Armando.
You're
I
welcome.
don't have any questions waiting in the Q&A box, but now is your opportunity. There's a question about the seafood cooking classes. Can you talk about how people can view those?
Say it again, sorry. I was trying to look for something.
The cooking classes that you all are doing, the seafood at your fingertips, how do people watch those?
Yes, so that's done through a Facebook page. So you do have to have a social media account, but if you want to watch it live. However, we do have them, we record all those shows and we put them in our for a Seagrand Seafood at Your Fingertips site. So maybe I can type that in the chat panel. But you can access it through our website and they are all recorded. So you can go to a specific recipe and look at a recipe card. I don't know if I mentioned that there's a whole recipe card that tie into the blog that we do the week before and then to the video. So you don't have to watch the video to learn how to cook this. You can just go directly to the recipe card and then prepare the seafood, which is a great place.
Great. So a couple questions have come in. The first one is related to commercial fishing and whether or not individuals who are practicing commercial fishing specialize in one type of fish, or do they haul in lots of types and kind of, go with what they get?
Angela, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that does depend on the fishing vessel in question. So a lot of fishermen do specialize in certain species. So for instance, they might target bait fish, or they might target the grouper snapper complex, which are reef associated, which take a specific type of gear. So most of the time, most fishermen are targeting a specific type or species group, species complex when they're fishing. But at the same time, some of the fishermen will definitely keep things that they can sell, even if it's not part of the target suite of species they might have been targeting that day.
Okay, great. And then next question is, how are charter boats and private vessels monitored to assure legal size limits and seasons are observed?
Go ahead, Angela.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is another excellent question. Commercial fisheries are highly regulated in the U.S. So all of our commercial fishermen have to abide by a series of regulations and rules. There are observer monitoring programs and dock intercepts, charter or not charter, but commercial anglers need to submit trip tickets. So they have to document all of their landings by species, total number, total weight, things like that. So all of those things are monitored through a system of paperwork that goes through our state and federal governments, depending on which fishery we're talking about. So yeah, they are highly regulated, and they are pretty well enforced. I would say that the U.S. and the state of Florida are some of the most well managed and well regulated, as far as actually having a regulation in place and then following through and making sure that those regulations are being followed. The U.S. does a very good job at that. So yep. I think I'm going to ramble here, but I'll stop talking about it. There are lots of things in place to make sure that those guys are following the rules.
Yeah, and a lot of this have been, case studies. So they've been learning through time, looking at stocks and trying to record them. So there's a lot of conservation efforts as well. So this is, arbitrary kind of thing. It's actually, well studied.
Right. There's a couple of questions about aquaculture in Sarasota Bay and whether or not there is any aquaculture in Sarasota Bay, and a question about apparently it seemed to have been controversial. So they're wondering what the status is on that, if you know anything about it.
Well, I know there's aquaculture of shellfish in Manatee County, right?
Yeah. So there's no shellfish aquaculture in Sarasota Bay. The shellfish aquaculture is in Tampa Bay. So these are commercial shellfish leases that are regulated through the state of Florida, and they're growing clams and oysters on the southeastern portion of Tampa Bay. But I think the question is probably related to the offshore aquaculture operation that's been proposed off of Sarasota. That is a pilot project that has been proposed that would go in. It would be putting net pens, big, large floating net pens, to farm Almaco jack in, again, large offshore pens, and it would be about 40 to 50 miles off the coast of Sarasota. And this is currently in the review process with the EPA. So that is still under review. It had initially been, it had gone through multiple levels of approval and then public comment. There was a lot of public concern over this. So EPA is I actually just checked about this a couple of weeks ago. EPA is still in the process of reviewing those comments on whether or not that permit is going to be appealed or moved forward. So, but that being said, I think that we are going to be seeing a lot more offshore aquaculture permitting processes going into place over the next 10 years, simply because of the direction that our seafood production is moving. Consumption is up, demand is up, but our wild capture fisheries can only handle so much of that. So responsible aquaculture is one of those things that might be utilized as another way to provide that, that fish protein.
And I'm just going to add that even though it might seem, like a tedious process to get into it, but that makes it more transparent. And even though the difficulty of getting the permits and all the public hearing and they allowing people to speak, that's, to me, that's a sign that you want to do something right. So, it's not just somebody making a decision, which you can see in other parts of the globe, and then it's too late.
Okay, next question is just someone's a little bit concerned about farm-raised fish, and I think there needs to be some clarification there between, different types of aquaculture, and, so this person is asking about the health of farm-raised fish and whether or not it's healthy and safe to eat.
And that's what aquaculture has a bad rep, because, people, you have a tendency to remember the bad things, not as much the good things. So there's some bad aquaculture, obviously, a lot of use of antibiotics and many different things. Fish growing in very poor conditions, escapees in areas that maybe they shouldn't be. So those are the things, and that's why it's so hard now to open aquaculture, because they want to make sure that you have a plan, where you're gonna do it. So I wouldn't be concerned as much, especially here in the United States. If it's coming from another country, then it might be a different story. That's when those eco labels help as well. But Angela, you want to say something else?
No, I would just reiterate what you just said, Armando. That's a good answer. I think you know, aquaculture's come a long way since its initiation, and many of the, especially the U.S. Produced aquacultured fish are in pretty good living conditions, well circulated systems, like an aquarium type setting. So they're not necessarily in gross water. You know, they do have regulations that they've got to follow to make sure that those fish are well taken care of before they go out for consumption.
And another thing that you can do if you want to, you know, help your native fish population, eat invasive species like lionfish. So there's lionfish dervis. It's a wonderful, tasty fish. It's just doesn't belong to our water. So that's another way that you can increase your seafood consumption and help native population of fish.
Lionfish are delicious.
There you go. And there's many ways that a lot of people are, you know, scared about the venom and the spines, but there's ways to remove the spines without any problem. If they are the venom, you kill it by heat. So if you pan fry the whole fish, then there's no problems. And many different. So we have a lot of information on Florida Sea Grant website and FWC too. So.
All right. So a question about mercury levels in salmon, and if you live in Florida and you want to eat salmon, what's kind of the most sustainable way to do so?
Well, first, you know, U.S. product, that's gonna be easier to know if it's, you know, what kind of regulations are on the fishery. That's for sure. A lot of, as I said, because a lot of people are care about mercury, then a lot of these seafood products actually say, you know, free of mercury, or they even test it. So there's a lot of information about the product that you having, and a lot of labels included there. You can also look at the Fishwatch or do your own research, you know, and look at levels of mercury accumulated in those species. There's some of them just because, as I told you, the life history, which where do they live, how fast do they grow, they have a tendency to maybe accumulate more mercury than others. So, you know, sardines comparing to a bluefin or marlin, then the levels of mercury that a sardine will accumulate through its lifetime is very minimal compared to a huge flowing fish. So just find out more about the species, and again, but all the benefits outweigh the risk. So unless you're really, you know, like maybe a pregnant woman, or like somebody with a very compromised immune system, but otherwise, it will be really hard to get a lot of mercury in your body by eating a lot of seafood, unless it was from one of those mercury hotspots, like happened in Japan. Obviously, that the whole system was totally heavily polluted with mercury. So do your research, but don't worry too much. I think this has been a lot of worries on people, and it's because they don't know all the details about it.
Yeah, I would want to reiterate a little bit about that mercury concern. There's been a lot of data and research on this topic over the past decade or so that has really sort of shifted the way that consumers need to think about mercury. It's not nearly the levels of concern for mercury are not nearly as high as they used to be as far as consuming our wild seafood products. There are certain spaces, some of the Great Lakes fish, for example, that are near industrial output, you know, historical industrial output, and they're contained within freshwater systems. There are some species in the Great Lakes that are still a cause for concern. And then again, some of our really top level predators like our sharks and wahoo still contain, you know, levels of mercury that you wouldn't want to have it every day for dinner. But most of the species out there available for consumption, not a problem. It's actually probably more risky for you to avoid seafood because seafood has so many health benefits. And I'm not just saying that because I love our seafood producers. There's a lot of literature out there that supports the benefits of consuming seafood and the risks of not consuming enough of it. So eat your seafood. And then as far as farm-raised salmon, most of the time, those guys are processed at an age where they haven't had that long of a life anyway, so there's not a lot of time for high levels of bioaccumulation of heavy metals or toxins.
Good point.
Are there any specific countries that you would suggest avoiding seafood products from due to whether they're, you know, let's say less sustainable?
No, I think you have to look at it by species, by stock. That would be to cruel to pinpoint a country. I think if you look at the species, you know, there's some stocks that are totally declining and recognized and well known. So you don't want to be, you know, eating that particular stock of fish. And there's, as I said, there's resources that you can read and find out about that particular species. So if you can wait, hold on into eating something before you find out a little bit more, that's, at least that's what I do. You know, if I go to the supermarket and I see, and I'm going to say Chilean sea bass is bad. It might be, I don't know. But if I see something that I know is something I don't know, I don't go in for the thing I don't know. I find out a little bit more, and then I go buy it. At the meantime, I buy the shrimp. You know, I buy the mangrove snapper or something like that. That is local that I know of. So there's a lot of ways that you can inform. And if you do have questions, I mean, that's what we're here for. So we can guide you to the right place if you have particular questions about a particular stock. But yeah, I wouldn't single out a particular country. I was gonna say Canada is so fun, but I don't have anything in Canadians, which is a joke.
All right, well, the last question that kind of came into the chat box was related to redfish, and when it's served at a restaurant, what species is it really? And what is it, redfish or is it something else? I don't know if you want to tackle that one.
That's a big problem. Sometimes, you know, the restaurant, they don't know. And there's case studies that they look at, actually they've done DNA analysis, going to restaurants and looking at DNA and seeing if what they're selling is actually the fish. Sometimes it's not even the fault of the restaurant, it's with the people that selling the fish, and they tell them, and you know, sometimes it's fillet, so they don't know what fish is. So that's why I think that it's our responsibility as a customer to ask those questions, because if they don't know, then if more people ask them, they're gonna start finding out. Some of the best seafood restaurants are the ones that actually can show you a whole fish, and that way you can see your fish. Obviously, if you don't know what you're looking at, then you might have a problem there. But that's why educating yourself and asking those questions will help the restaurants too in the industry, and they will put more effort into finding out. And we do have very great examples of restaurants that they do care about that, and they inform themselves and they tell you in advance. I'm not gonna, you know, advertise in the restaurant, but I've been to ones that even know how to being caught, like what kind of fisheries is this and when. So those are great things. Yeah, so a lot of people don't know, and they can sell you anything. But if we keep continuing eating without knowing, they're gonna still get away, and maybe they don't want to get away. They just don't know, and they don't know you care. So it's on us.
I just have to jump in real quick about, I saw a question flash through about what the best fishy fish to eat locally is. And so I just wanted to address that real quick and give a shout out to the mullet, the mighty mullet. It gets a bad rap, but it's delicious. And if you like fishy fish, I highly recommend mullet. It's way more local than salmon. And it's also really good to eat. And we're starting to get into the fall, which is prime mullet harvesting season, so you might start seeing it at some of your local seafood providers more often in the fall.
Smoked mullet, the best.
All right, great. Well, thank you both so much. It was a great presentation. And if you are interested in more of these types of topics, please check out our next webinar in the series on sustainability, and check out our various YouTube pages and Facebooks. We have all kinds of videos up on all kinds of topics that you might be interested in. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks, Armando. Thanks, Angela.